I asked Jesus how much time we have left. His warning left me speechless. It is 2:47 in the morning on March 4th, 2026, and I am sitting here in the dark with my hands shaking so badly I can barely hold this still. I need you to understand that I did not plan to do this tonight. I did not sit down at my desk earlier today with an outline and a content calendar thinking I would record something at 3 in the morning. That is not what this is. This is me, right now, in real time, still inside whatever just happened to me, unable to sleep, unable to be quiet, unable to let the sun come up without telling you what I experienced tonight. And I know how this is going to sound. I know I have been around long enough to know exactly how a man talking to a camera in the middle of the night about a vision he received sounds to most people. I know the skeptics are already typing in the comments. I know there are people watching this right now who have been burned by this kind of thing before, who have heard prophetic words that never came to pass, who have watched people build platforms on spiritual manipulation, and who have every reason to be cautious. I respect that. I genuinely do. And I want you to hold me accountable. What I'm about to tell you should be tested against Scripture, weighed in prayer, and held before the Lord by every single person who hears it. I am not asking you to receive this because I said it. I'm asking you to receive it if the Holy Spirit confirms it in your own heart. But I need you to hear me when I say that what happened tonight was real. This was not a dream. This was not an overactive imagination. I was awake. I was in prayer. I was sober in every sense of the word. And what I encountered, what was shown to me, what was said to me in that room tonight, I cannot sit on. I cannot file it away for later. Something in my spirit is insisting, more loudly than anything I have felt in years, that there are specific people watching this right now who need to hear exactly what he told me. And if I stay silent because I'm afraid of what people will think, then I have failed those people, and I am not willing to do that. So here we are. 2:47 in the morning. My eyes are red. My voice is probably unsteady, and I'm going to tell you everything. Now let me say one more thing before I get into it. This is not for everyone. And I mean that with love, not with exclusivity. There are people who will watch this, and it will bounce right off them, and that's okay. Maybe this isn't their moment. But there are other people, and I believe you may be one of them, for whom this is going to land somewhere very deep and very specific, for whom this is going to feel less like watching someone else's experience and more like hearing something addressed personally to them. If you start feeling that, if you start feeling something stirring in your chest or behind your eyes, do not dismiss it. That's not emotion manipulated by music or atmosphere. That's the Spirit of God meeting you where you are. I've been feeling something building for weeks now, that low hum in my spirit that doesn't have a clean name. I described it to a friend the other day as feeling like standing in a field when the sky is starting to change before a storm. Everything looks normal, the grass is still green, but something in the air is different. Something has shifted that you can feel before you can see. And I know from talking to people all over the country and honestly all over the world that I am not the only one feeling this. Something is happening. Something in the spirit is moving. Something in the atmosphere around us has changed. And most people are completely unaware because they are distracted by the noise of ordinary life. You are not here by accident tonight. So let me tell you what happened. I need to take you back to around 11 o'clock last night. I had been in prayer for an extended time. Not a structured prayer, not a liturgical prayer, just a conversation, the kind of extended, rambling, honest conversation you have with someone you have known your whole life and trust completely. I wasn't asking for anything dramatic. I wasn't seeking a vision or a word or anything you might call prophetic. I was just present, just talking, just being in his presence the way you sit in the same room as someone you love without needing anything particular to happen. And somewhere in that conversation, a question formed in my heart that I had been carrying for a long time, a question I had been almost afraid to ask out loud because I wasn't sure I could handle the answer. And, I have asked myself since then why I asked it when I did. What finally tipped me from carrying it silently to saying it out loud. And I think the honest answer is that I had been present with him long enough that the distance between what I was feeling and what I was saying had collapsed. Like when you're really tired and really close to someone, and the careful distance you maintain in normal conversation just falls away. So I said it. I said, Lord, I said, how much time do we have left? I said it quietly, almost in a whisper, like I was afraid of waking something up with the asking of it. And what happened in the seconds that followed, I'm going to try to describe as carefully and honestly as I possibly can, because I don't want to overdramatize this and I don't want to underdescribe it. The room changed. That is the truest way I know to say it. The room changed. There was a weight that settled, a presence that became tangible in a way that it had not been a moment before. Not frightening, not threatening, but absolutely unmistakable. Solid. the kind of presence that makes every other presence you've ever felt seem thin by comparison. And I knew before he said a single thing. I knew that he was going to answer my question, and I also knew, in the same instant, that the answer was going to require something of me, that I was not going to be allowed to receive it and then just go to bed and sleep it off. That once I heard what he had to show me, I was going to be a carrier of it, responsible for it, and that responsibility was going to include doing exactly what I'm doing right now. He showed me 7 things, and I am going to tell you all 7. I'm not saving any of them for a part 2. I'm not holding back the uncomfortable ones to protect a platform or an audience. He didn't say to share some of this, he said to share it, so all 7 of them are coming tonight. I want to say this clearly before I start the first one. What he showed me was not shown in anger. I need you to understand that, because when you hear some of these things, your instinct might be to categorize them as judgment, as wrath, as a God who is fed up and getting ready to lower the hammer. And that is not what this was. The posture he came in tonight, the emotional register of everything he showed me, was grief. Profound, parental, inconsolable grief, not the cold, calculating grief of a judge who knew what the verdict was going to be, the grief of someone who loves beyond what we can measure and who can see something coming that the people he loves are not prepared for. That is the frame. Everything I'm about to tell you sits inside that frame. This is love, extreme, urgent, honest, uncompromising love. The first thing he showed me, I have been calling it the closing of the comfortable window. I saw it as clearly as I'm seeing this room right now. There was a window, an open window set in a wall, and through the window there was warm golden light. Not sunlight exactly, something more than sunlight. And there were people on both sides of the wall. On the near side were people who were walking toward the window and stepping through, one after another, moving from where they were into that light. And on the far side, spread out at various distances, were other people who were aware of the window. They knew it was there. They weren't deceived about its existence or its invitation, but they were comfortable where they were. They were planning to get to the window eventually. When the timing was better, when life settled down, when they felt more ready, when they had sorted out the questions they still had, when the season of busyness passed, they were not hostile to the window, they were just not moving toward it. And as I watched this, the window began to close, not slam shut, not disappear, close. Slowly and steadily, the way a heavy door swings on its hinge when the pressure that held it open is gradually removed. And the people who were mid-journey toward it, who had been moving however slowly, they quickened their steps and made it through. But the ones who were standing back, who had been waiting for a better moment, who had plans to come but hadn't come yet, some of them didn't make it. And he said to me clearly, the season of easy access is ending. I need you to sit with those 5 words, the season of easy access is ending, because I know what your mind is going to do with that. It's going to go to the theology of grace. It's going to push back and say that God is always accessible, that there is always a way back, that the door is never fully closed to the repentant heart. And that is true. I'm not contradicting any of that. But there is something else that is also true, something that mature believers and honest historians of revival understand. There are seasons in which the Spirit of God moves in a particular intensity and accessibility. Seasons when repentance is easy because conviction is near. Seasons when prayer feels effortless because heaven is close. Seasons when the invitation to come home is so warm and so present that even the most hardened heart can feel it. And those seasons are gifts. They are not the permanent baseline of spiritual life. They are graces given for a time, and they are meant to be responded to in the time they are given, not filed away for later. He showed me that we are in the closing days of one of those seasons, not the end of grace, the end of a particular ease of access to grace. And the word he gave me for you is this: do not wait for a better time. The best time is right now, today, this moment. Because the window that feels wide open and effortless to walk through tonight may feel considerably narrower and heavier to push through in 6 months. I'm not saying this to frighten you. I'm saying it because he loves you enough to tell you the truth about the season, rather than let you assume the current ease is going to last indefinitely. The second thing he showed me followed the first one so quickly it felt connected, like one was the cause and the other was the mechanism. He showed me what I can only describe as the great distraction. And this one hit me hard because I recognize myself in it. I saw millions of faces, and every single face was lit from below by a screen. Not a television or a computer the way we used to picture screens. Just the omnipresent blue-white glow that is everywhere now, that is the constant ambient light of modern life. And the people whose faces I saw were not bad people. They were not people in rebellion. They were not people who had consciously chosen the world over God. They were regular people, church-going people, people who would call themselves believers if you asked, people who had good intentions and genuine love for their families and a general belief in the importance of faith. But they were completely consumed, not by evil, just by stuff. The endless stream of stuff that modern life puts in front of us at every single hour of every single day. And he said to me, and I want you to hear this because this is one of the most clarifying things he said all night. He said, the enemy doesn't need to make them hate me. He just needs to keep them busy. I mean, think about what that means. The enemy's primary strategy for this generation is not atheism, it's not persecution, it's not intellectual assault on the foundations of faith, though all of those exist. The primary weapon is distraction. The primary tool is the filling of every available moment with something that isn't him. Because a believer who never stops long enough to pray is functionally as spiritually ineffective as a believer who has left the faith entirely. A Bible that sits unopened on a nightstand accumulates no living word in the heart of its owner. A relationship with God that gets zero relational investment becomes a theological position rather than a living connection. And the enemy knows this, he has always known it, but he has never had more effective tools for creating distraction than he has right now. The average person in this country spends multiple hours every single day consuming content that has nothing to do with God, and then wonders why their spiritual life feels thin and far away. I'm not standing above this looking down at it, I'm in it. I felt the conviction of this one land on me personally as he showed it to me. How many times have I reached for my phone before I've reached for my Bible? How many hours of content have I consumed in the last week compared to how many hours I have spent in actual prayer? I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. I'm trying to make you feel awake. Because the distraction is so normalized, so built into the architecture of daily life that most of us don't even experience it as a choice anymore. It's just how life works, and he is saying tonight, loudly and clearly and with grief in his voice, that the cost of that normalization is profound, and that the people who will be prepared for what is coming are the people who decide right now, in this season, to deliberately and intentionally reclaim their attention for him. Let me pause here for a moment and look directly at you. I want to ask you something that I felt him asking as he showed me this. When is the last time you sat in silence with God long enough to actually hear something back? Not a 10-minute quiet time where you read a few verses and said a quick prayer and went on with your day. I mean real silence, real waiting, real presence with him that didn't have a timer attached. Because relationship requires time. Real relationship, the kind that sustains you through crisis and anchors you through acceleration and roots you deeply enough that you are not shaken by what shakes the unprepared. That kind of relationship requires investment. It requires showing up, not once a week on Sunday, not in the few minutes before sleep when your brain is already shutting down, consistently, intentionally, as a priority rather than an afterthought. The third thing he showed me was the one that made me most uncomfortable, because it was the most personal. He showed me a sifting, a great sifting that he said is already beginning, even now as we speak. He showed me two groups of people, and at the beginning they looked almost identical. They used the same language, they attended the same churches, they knew the same scriptures and sang the same songs, and had the same general outline of Christian belief and practice. From the outside, an observer would have had difficulty telling them apart. But then pressure came. Not catastrophic pressure, not end-of-the-world pressure, just the ordinary, extraordinary pressure that comes when following Jesus starts to cost something real, when your faith becomes unpopular in the places where you spend your time, when the gap between what Jesus asks for and what the culture rewards starts to widen in ways that require actual sacrifice, when prayer and obedience and surrender stop being things you do alongside a comfortable life and start being things that put you at odds with a comfortable life. And in that pressure, the two groups separated, not dramatically, not in any single decisive moment you could point to, but gradually and unmistakably they went in different directions. The first group, they struggled. Some of them really struggled. Some of them went through seasons of doubt that scared them. Some of them had moments of genuine failure. But they held on, they kept coming back. They kept saying yes, even when yes cost them something. And they came through the pressure refined, not destroyed, shaped into something more real and more rooted than they had been before. The second group was different. When the pressure came, they found reasons. Sophisticated, intelligent, compassionate-sounding reasons to move the line, to adjust their theology in the direction of what was culturally acceptable, to call compromise nuance and call retreat evolution. They didn't leave noisily, they didn't announce a departure, they just quietly moved the boundary until they were standing somewhere entirely different from where they started. And the saddest part is that many of them genuinely didn't know it was happening. The drift was so gradual, so well justified at every step, that they never had the experience of making a single wrong choice. They just made 1,000 small accommodations and woke up one day far from home. And he said to me, and I've been sitting with this one all night, the sifting reveals what was always true, not creates something new. The pressure doesn't make you who you are, it shows you who you already were, which is both sobering and hopeful. Sobering because it means you cannot assume that future you is going to be braver or more faithful than present you, unless present you is actively doing the work to become that person. Hopeful because it means the time to work on your roots is right now before the pressure arrives, when the cost of growth is relatively low and the opportunity to deepen is wide open. So I'm asking you on his behalf tonight, where are you planting your roots? Not where do you plan to plant them eventually. Where are you actually planting them right now, today, with the choices and priorities and investments of your actual daily life? The fourth thing he showed me had to do with the generation behind us, and this was the one that made me weep the longest. He showed me young people, teenagers and young adults and people in their 20s, an entire generation, and the thing that struck me about what I saw was not rebellion. It wasn't hostility to God or contempt for faith or any of the things we typically worry about when we think about young people in the church. The thing that struck me, the thing that broke my heart, was how spiritually hungry they were, how genuinely desperate for something real they were, and how many of them had looked into the church, had looked toward the adults in their lives who claimed to have faith, and walked away not because they rejected what they found there, but because they found so little. He said to me, and this is a word for every parent, every mentor, every pastor, every Sunday school teacher, every small group leader, every believer of any age who has young people in their lives: the fathers have been silent. And he didn't mean silent in the sense of not saying anything. He meant silent in the sense of not modeling anything, not living anything that the next generation can see and touch and witness in real time and think, yes, that is real, that is worth giving my life to, that is the kind of faith I want to carry. Because young people are not primarily persuaded by arguments, they're persuaded by lives. They're watching the adults around them for evidence that faith is real, that Jesus is actually present, that prayer actually does something, that following God is not just a cultural habit inherited from grandparents, but a living, transforming encounter with a living God. And what too many of them are seeing is a version of Christianity that looks fine from the outside and is essentially empty on the inside. A performance of faith without the substance of it. And they know it. Young people always know it. They may not have the theological vocabulary to articulate what's missing, but they can feel the hollow, and they're walking away from the hollow toward whatever does feel real to them, which is often anything and everything but God. The word he gave me for those of you who have young people in your sphere of influence is this: they need to see you pray like you believe it works. They need to see you trust God with something that actually costs you trust. They need to hear you talk about Jesus the way you talk about someone you actually know, not as a theological concept or a moral framework or a cultural identity, but as a living person who is present and active and real in your daily life. They need to see you fail and come back. They need to see you wrestle honestly with doubt and come out the other side still holding on. They need to see that faith is not a performance for them or for anyone else, but the actual ground you stand on when the ground gets unstable. That is the inheritance they are desperately hungry for, and many of them are not getting it, and he grieves that. He grieves it the way a parent grieves watching their grandchildren left spiritually starving because their parents were too distracted or too afraid or too unsure of their own faith to give them what they needed. The fifth thing he showed me, I described earlier as the great acceleration, and I want to go deeper into it now because this one has the most practical implications for how you live starting tomorrow. He showed me the pace of things increasing, not in a steady, gradual, linear way, but in a compounding, exponential way. Events that would have taken years to unfold began happening in months. Changes that would have taken a generation to normalize began normalizing in moments. The volume and frequency and intensity of things requiring your attention and response increased until the idea of keeping up with all of it was simply impossible. And in that environment, in that accelerating, churning environment, two kinds of people were visible. The first kind were completely overwhelmed. They were making decisions reactively, responding to whatever was loudest and most recent, unable to orient themselves because the ground beneath their feet was shifting too fast for them to find their footing. Their fear drove their choices. Their anxiety was palpable, not because they were weak, but because they were unrooted. They had nothing beneath them that wasn't also moving. The second kind, and this is the part that moved me most, were still. Not passive, not disengaged. They were fully aware of everything that was happening. They were not living in denial or in some kind of spiritual bubble that insulated them from reality, but they had a stillness at the center that nothing in their external circumstances could touch. And that stillness was not a personality trait. It was not a temperament. It was not something some people naturally have and others don't. It was a product of relationship. It was the overflow of an intimacy with Jesus that had been built over time through consistent investment, through long hours of prayer and scripture and honest communion with God, through seasons of learning to trust Him with things that were genuinely scary and discovering that He could be trusted. That rootedness, that depth, that cultivated intimacy, it was producing in them a peace and a clarity and a wisdom that looked to the people around them, frankly, supernatural. And he said to me, "The prepared will not be shaken by what shakes the unprepared." I wrote that down as soon as he said it, and I have said it to myself probably 50 times since. The prepared will not be shaken by what shakes the unprepared. The preparation is not strategic or logistical, though those things have their place. The preparation that produces that quality of stillness in the middle of acceleration is spiritual preparation. It is the daily, mundane, unsexy work of sitting with God, reading His Word, building a prayer life that is real and alive, developing your capacity to hear His voice, trusting Him with small things, so that when large things come, you have a record of His faithfulness to stand on. You cannot manufacture that kind of rootedness in the moment of crisis. You have to build it before the crisis arrives, which means the time to build it is right now. The sixth thing He showed me was the one I least expected and the one that moved me most deeply. Because after 5 things that were heavy, after the closing window and the great distraction and the sifting and the hungry generation and the coming acceleration, I was braced for something heavier still. I was braced for the 7th seal or the final judgment or some overwhelming declaration of divine consequence, and instead He showed me a door, just a door, open, and standing in the doorway was Jesus, and He was not standing there looking stern. He was not standing there with arms crossed and a face that said, "You took too long and the terms have changed." He was standing there the way someone stands when they have been waiting a long time for someone they love and they can see them coming up the road. His arms were open, and He said to me, "I have not changed." And then He said it again, more quietly, "I have not changed." Not my invitation, not my love, not my willingness to receive every single person who comes to me, regardless of how long they waited, regardless of what they did while they were waiting, regardless of how far they went before they turned around. I have not changed. Everything around you is accelerating and shifting and being revealed and sifted and reshaped. The season of comfortable access is closing. The sifting is beginning. All of that is true. But I have not changed. I'm going to stop right here and look directly at someone specific. I don't know who you are. I don't know your name or your story or the specific shape of the distance between you and God right now. But I believe, and I felt this strongly as He showed me this 6th thing, I believe there is someone watching or listening to this right now for whom that distance is very real and has been there for a long time. Maybe you walked away deliberately after something that happened that you couldn't reconcile with your faith. Maybe you drifted so gradually you barely noticed until you looked up one day and realized you were somewhere you never intended to be. Maybe religion hurt you, damaged you, cost you something you can't fully calculate, and you needed to get far from it to survive. And in getting far from religion, you also got far from Him. Or maybe you never really had a close relationship with Him to begin with. Maybe faith was always more of an inherited identity than a living reality, and somewhere along the way, even the identity fell away. Whatever the shape of your distance, I want you to hear Him say directly to you right now, "I have not changed. The door is still open, and I am still standing in it. And tonight, at whatever hour it is wherever you are, I am specifically and intentionally and lovingly hoping you will come." That's not a sales pitch. That's not a manipulation. That's the heart of the God who showed me 7 things tonight, and the 6th one was this, that in the middle of every urgent warning, in the middle of every closing window and coming sifting and accelerating world, He is standing at an open door with His arms out, refusing to change, refusing to become less than who He is because the world has become more complicated than it used to be, refusing to love less, refusing to close the door before you get there. Come, just come. And now the 7th thing, the one I told you about early in this conversation, the one He held until last. And I understand, now that I've told you the other 6, why He held it until last. Because without the other six, the seventh one can sound too light for what we're facing. It can sound like cheap comfort slapped on top of serious warning. But coming after everything else, coming as the culmination of everything he showed me tonight, the seventh thing is not cheap comfort. It is the most profound and galvanizing and essential thing he said all night. Are you ready? He showed me a harvest. Not a small harvest, not a quiet, contained, manageable, expected harvest that fits neatly into our existing categories of how God moves. An enormous, overwhelming, unexpected, unprecedented harvest. He showed me people coming to faith in numbers and through circumstances that would confound every expert who has been writing the obituary of the church in the West. He showed me the young generation, the one he showed me as hungry and searching in the fourth vision coming home. Not all of them, but more of them than anyone who hasn't seen this would dare to predict. He showed me people who had walked away for decades, people who had built their whole intellectual and social identity on the rejection of faith coming back, quietly at first, then not so quietly. He showed me people who experienced the acceleration, who felt the ground shift, who had their comfortable distractions stripped away by circumstances beyond their control, and who in the aftermath of that stripping turned toward him rather than away from him, turned toward the one thing that didn't accelerate, turned toward the one presence that didn't change. He showed me communities and families and networks of relationship being transformed by this coming home in ways that rippled outward far beyond the individuals involved. And he said to me, and this is the sentence I want you to carry out of this conversation and into your morning and into your week and into this entire season. The urgency is not only about warning, the urgency is about harvest. Time is short, not just for warning, for reaping. The fields are ripe right now, the workers are needed right now. And the question he has for his people, the ones who are awake and rooted and available, is not only will you survive what's coming, it is will you work while there is still time to work. The harvest is coming. He showed it to me as certain, as determined, as something that is happening regardless of whether we are ready for it or not. But he also showed me that the extent of it, the depth of it, the number of people gathered in by it, that part is contingent. That part depends on the availability and willingness and preparation of the people he is sending into the field. Every worker matters. Every conversation matters. Every relationship you have been maintaining with someone far from God. Every seed you have planted. Every prayer you have prayed over someone's name. Every moment you were faithful when it would have been easier not to be. All of it is connected to this harvest that is coming. None of it was wasted. None of it is too late to begin. So let me bring this back to the seven things, and let me put them in front of you one more time in order, because I want you to walk away from this tonight with all seven clear in your heart. 1. The closing of the comfortable window. The season of easy access to grace is ending, though the door is not yet shut. Respond now. Come now. Do not wait for a better moment, because this is the best moment there is. 2. The great distraction. The enemy doesn't need to make you hate God. He just needs to keep you too busy for him. Reclaim your attention with intention. Give him the first and best of your time, not the leftovers of it. 3. The sifting. A season of pressure is coming that will reveal what you are actually made of spiritually. Decide now who you are and build your roots now, while the building is relatively easy. The time to settle your convictions is before the test, not during it. 4. The silence of the fathers. The generation behind you is spiritually starving, and they are watching you for evidence that faith is real. Give them something worth inheriting. Live your faith out loud where they can see it. 5. The great acceleration. Things will move fast. Root yourself deeply in intimacy with Jesus right now, so that you are not shaken by what shakes the unprepared. The anchor is not a strategy. The anchor is relationship. 6. The open door. He has not changed. Whatever the shape of your distance from him, the door is open. He is standing in it, and tonight is the night to come home. 7. The harvest. The urgency is not only about warning. There is an enormous harvest of souls coming, and he is looking for workers who are prepared and willing and available. Will you be in the field? Now I want to speak to a few specific groups of people before I close, because he was very specific about the people who need to hear different parts of this tonight. If you are someone who has been meaning to get serious about your faith for a long time, who has been carrying the intention to build a real prayer life or get into the Word consistently or find a community of believers or simply have an honest, unguarded conversation with God about where things actually stand between you, the message for you tonight is simple and urgent. Stop waiting. The window is open right now. This is the best it's going to feel to step through it. The ease you feel right now in responding is a grace of this season. Don't take it for granted. Don't file it away as something to come back to when life settles down, because life is not going to settle down. The acceleration that's coming is not going to create the quiet space you've been waiting for. There is no better time coming. There is only right now. If you are someone who is already walking closely with Jesus, who has built something real in your relationship with Him, who has roots that go down, the word for you tonight is this: you are needed in the field. This is not a season to keep your faith quiet and private. I'm not telling you to be obnoxious or aggressive or to turn every conversation into a theological argument. I'm telling you that the people around you are more spiritually open right now than they appear. The acceleration and the uncertainty that is coming is going to shake things loose in people who seemed comfortable and settled. And in that shaking, they are going to look around for something solid. They're going to look around for someone who has an anchor. Be visible, be available, be the kind of person someone who is in crisis knows they can call. Stay connected to the people in your life who don't know Jesus yet. Don't retreat into your community of faith in a way that creates distance from the people you are specifically positioned to reach. The harvest is coming, and it is going to come through relationships, through genuine human connection, through the testimony of real lives that have been genuinely transformed. If you are a parent, I have a specific and personal word for you. Your children are conducting an ongoing experiment to find out whether your faith is real. They are not doing it maliciously. They are doing it because they are humans who need real things to hold on to, and they are watching the most influential people in their lives to find out whether what those people believe is actually load-bearing. They are not watching your theology. They are watching your Tuesday morning. They are watching how you handle failure and disappointment and financial stress and relational conflict, and the thousand small moments of ordinary life that happen far from any stage or Sunday service. Give them evidence that Jesus is real in the Tuesday morning. Let them hear you pray for something specific and tell them when it happens. Let them see you fail and come back. Let them see that faith is not a performance for anyone's benefit, but the actual ground you stand on when the ground gets difficult. Because the spiritual inheritance you are either giving or withholding right now is not a small thing. It is shaping the people who will shape the world after you. If you are someone who has walked away, I want to end with you. I want to come back one more time to the sixth thing he showed me, because I believe it is specifically and personally for someone in this category. The open door. He has not changed. I know that is easy to say and can feel hollow, depending on what your experience has been. I know that religion has been used as a weapon against real human beings in ways that are genuinely inexcusable. I know that churches have failed people. I know that spiritual leaders have betrayed trust in ways that leave damage that doesn't disappear when you walk through a door. I'm not asking you to pretend any of that didn't happen. I'm not asking you to go back to an institution or a community or a system that hurt you. I'm asking you to consider whether the door he is standing in tonight is separate from all of that. Whether the Jesus who stood at the open door in what he showed me, arms open, saying, "I have not changed," whether he is the source of the wound or the healer of it, whether the distance you feel right now is from a system that failed you or from a person who has been waiting for you to come home through a different door than the one that hurt you. That's the question he was asking me to carry to you tonight. Just consider it. Just hold it before him and ask him to show you who he actually is. Separate from every version of him that has been handed to you by fallible human beings. He can handle the asking. He has been waiting for it. Before I close, I want to talk about the setting he chose for this encounter, because I don't think it was accidental. He didn't meet me in a sanctuary or in a conference room or at a ministry event. He met me on what felt like an alpine plateau above the tree line. That image has stayed with me all night. Above the tree line. You know what that means if you've ever been in the mountains. Above the tree line, there is nothing between you and the sky. No trees to soften the wind or block the view. No canopy to filter the light. Just the raw, exposed summit of the mountain and the full, unmediated atmosphere pressing down on you. It is one of the most clarifying and sometimes terrifying environments you can stand in. Nothing to hide behind, nothing to insulate you from the reality of where you are and what the sky is doing. And I felt, as he spoke to me in that place, that this is exactly where he is calling his people right now. Not to a comfortable spot below the tree line where the wind is manageable and the view is partial and you can tell yourself you're in the mountains without really having to contend with all that the mountains actually are. He is calling us above the tree line, into the place of full exposure, full clarity, full surrender, where there is nothing between you and the sky, and nothing to do but fall on your face or stand in awe, or both at the same time. That is the altitude this season requires. That is the kind of faith this hour demands. not managed, comfortable, tree-line level faith that fits neatly into a lifestyle and doesn't ask too much and doesn't offer too much and looks presentable at all times, but exposed above the tree-line faith that has given up its hiding places and its comfortable illusions and is standing fully in what God is doing and fully in what God is asking. The view from that altitude is breathtaking. The harvest he showed me looks different from up there. The urgency feels different. The open door looks different. Everything looks different when you're willing to come up out of the trees and stand in the full wind of what God is doing in this hour. That's the invitation, not just to receive this word tonight, but to go higher, to stop managing your faith from a comfortable altitude and let him take you above the tree line where he is working, where the harvest is being gathered, where the people who will not be shaken are standing in the full weight of his presence with nothing between them and the sky. I want to pray with you before I close. If you are in a place tonight where you want to respond to what he has been saying, whether for the first time or as a recommitment, whether as a declaration of availability for the harvest or a return from the distance, I want to give you the words if you need them. You can say this out loud or quietly in your heart. Say, Jesus, I hear you tonight. I don't want to be on the wrong side of the closing window. I don't want to be one of the distracted ones. I don't want to be caught in the sifting with shallow roots. I don't want to leave the generation behind me with nothing worth inheriting. I want to be rooted. I want to be present. I want to be part of the harvest. Whatever distance exists between us right now, whatever got me to where I am bringing it to the open door. I trust that you have not changed. I trust that the door is still open. I am walking through it. Help me mean this tomorrow and next week, and in the hard moments when it costs me something, I'm yours. Amen. If you prayed that, it matters. What happened in that moment is real, and it is registered, and it is the beginning of something that needs to be fed and tended. Here is what I am asking you to do in the next 24 hours, not next week, the next 24 hours. Tell one person what happened in your heart tonight. One person. Bring a witness into it. The moment you speak it out loud to another human being, it becomes something different than a private, internal event. It becomes something with weight and accountability and trajectory. Open your Bible and read something, anything, not to perform Bible reading, to sit with him in the Word and ask him to speak, and then be quiet enough and long enough to listen, even if nothing dramatic happens. Show up. And if you don't have a community of faith, start looking for one, not a perfect one. There is no perfect one, a real one, a place where people are genuinely trying to follow Jesus together, where honesty is welcome, where you are known by name. You are not built for this alone. Nobody is. And if you are already rooted, if you already have all of those things, then your assignment for the next 24 hours is simply this: reach one person, not a sermon at them, a reach toward them, the call you have been meaning to make, the text you have been drafting in your head, the coffee invitation that keeps not quite happening. Do it. Because the harvest doesn't wait for perfect timing. It just needs willing workers who show up. Please share this if it touched something real in you tonight. Not for numbers, because he specifically told me that there are people in your network, people you know personally and are connected to, who need to hear what was said tonight. Some of them will not find it on their own. They need you to put it in their path. That is not a small act of obedience. That is harvest work. That is you participating in the seventh thing he showed me. It is almost 4:30 in the morning now. I have been awake for hours carrying this and now carrying you through it. My eyes are full. My heart is full in a way that is hard to describe. I am exhausted in the way that only happens after you've done something that mattered. And I want to end with the seventh thing because I don't want the weight of the first six to be the thing you carry away from tonight. I want you to carry the harvest. I want you to walk away from this with a picture in your mind of what he showed me, of that overwhelming, history-making, expectation-defying harvest of souls that is coming, the people who are going to come home. The young generation who is hungry finding the real thing, the ones who have been lost for years finding their way back, the communities being transformed by the power of a living God. That is real. He showed it to me as certain, and it is coming. And he is asking right now in this season, with the window still open and the door still wide and the fields already ripe, he is asking who will work while there is still time to work. I'm going to be in the field. I hope you'll be there with me. More is coming. He is not finished speaking, and I am not finished carrying it. Until next time.